Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education, and I'm your host, Tim Bogatz. Today, I am excited to welcome Janet Taylor back to the show. Been a while since Janet's been on, but we have a lot to talk about today regarding grading and assessment. And I am looking forward to this conversation because Janet thinks deeply about assessment, about grading, about everything that goes along with it. And she's been doing that for a long time. And there's so many things happening with everything that's going on with grading right now, and I want to just kind of dive in. And this is going to be another one of those conversations that we maybe don't have the answers. There are a lot of problems out there that are beyond our control, a lot of problems that we can't solve. But I think we can talk about grading, we can talk about assessment in both practical ways and philosophical ways. You know, just how we grade, why we grade, and what we value when it comes to our assessment practices. And, you know, we are going to talk, I hope, about the changing face of education, about how motivation and lack of motivation, I suppose, has really changed a lot of what we do, but also how we are continuing to deal with grading practices that we may or may not agree with, or that keep us from doing exactly what we want to do, and how we can continue to come up with practices that support learning, support the experiences that we want our students to have in the art room. So again, we are not going to have all the answers today, but I think we do have some good topics to cover. So let me go ahead and bring on Janet now. Janet Taylor is joining me now. Janet, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Tim?
I am also great. It's good to talk to you. I feel like it's been like months since you've been on the podcast, which is kind of weird, but you've also been incredibly busy with school. So you survived all of that, though? Like you made it through the end of the year?
I have made it through the end of the year. I feel like I'm still somehow living day by day. It's going to happen. Everything's fine. Was that convincing?
I hope like the less we talk about this, the better.
Let's just move on.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to have you on to talk about grading because I feel like you have all of these ideas, that have been running through your head for years now about grading. You've tried so many different things, and I love just hearing kind of what your thoughts are, what your reflections are, what you've tried. And so I don't know how to phrase this, I guess, but, being that you've been engaged with grading and assessment for so long, there's so many things that you're working on, and it really brings up some, I guess, dilemmas, for lack of a better word, like some things that you're grappling with. So to kind of frame this discussion, can you kind of share what you've been thinking about, what you've been worrying about, and just kind of where our conversation might go today?
Well, I'm not sure our conversation will solve any of life's problems. So let's just start there, okay? But yes, I really appreciate having this conversation with you because, it's been something that's just really been on my mind, obviously for a long time. But as our educational landscape kind of shifts and changes and our students change and, we're getting older and whatnot, there's been a lot of things that I'm thinking about. And so basically, I've been in this deep world of assessment for a while and really mostly by chance, right? It's been a really interesting journey that I think a lot of our listeners hopefully have heard before, but I've done a lot of thinking about art assessment in art education, but also kind of like zooming back out on our education system as a whole and
Right.
really thinking about the what ifs. And prior to the pandemic, I really shifted my teaching practices pretty significantly over a decade, right?
Hmm.
And in turn, really felt that that because of that, the students were like starting to care less about the grades part,
Right.
day to day, and more about the investment in learning, which was really exciting for me. And this was a very high achieving, grade driven population of my school.
Yeah.
And so I got to the point where I decided I begged to do a pilot for a grades free classroom, basically.
Right.
My administration gave me approval after I came with like all this research, and they were like, whatever, Janet. And
They're like, hey, if we let you do this, will you go away?
pretty much. They're like, I didn't even look at this document, just do what you need to do. And so again, we're very lucky in arts that we don't have to worry, but we can be on our own and do those kinds of things
Yeah.
and have
Yeah.
approval. But anyway, so I felt like it was a really successful pilot, and then did it with one class, and then I expanded beyond. And I will preface this in, I know there's an article that I wrote about grades free. It wasn't really like grades free, right? Because you still have to do grades, the school system expects it, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But it was just different. I didn't put in all those grades all the time. The letters were not the focus. It was the feedback, right?
Right.
So students always knew where they were, and we always had like this on track grade and whatever. So anyway, so I was able to expand it into multiple classes, and it was going really well. And then the pandemic hit, right? And I mean, that like changes everything.
Right.
So I actually, I left that school. I'm at a new school. I've been there for about 3 years now. And so what I'm really curious about now, honestly, is kind of just still grappling with this whole point of grades. Like,
Yeah.
we still have to do it.
Hmm.
My students are different. I mean, even though the populations were very similar that I was serving, they just, right, we all know pandemic hit and
Yeah.
our
Things have changed.
changed significantly, like
Yes.
not just a little bit, right? Just like
Yes.
a lot. And so it's funny because I'm still grappling with it when I constantly still talk about how I just don't care about grades and nobody should care about grades. And I'm like, oh
Right.
yeah, grades are still on my mind. So can I just shout out real quick? I'm currently finishing up my master's through Art of Ed,
Yes.
and I'm in the capstone phase. And of course, can you guess what my topic is about?
Oh, I'm gonna guess it's either assessment or choice or maybe both.
All of the above. Can you believe? So my capstone is all about assessment being kind of the driving force for student voice and
Oh,
engagement.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, which is also, of course, when I was doing all this research, it's brought up research around grades, the perception and
Hmm.
impact of grades on learning, and really also intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And grades are that, right?
Yeah.
That's about learning and grades and kind of how that impacts our students. So it's been a really fascinating journey so far.
Yeah. I don't know. I love hearing about those things. I don't know, you summarizing research for me so I don't have to read it, but I appreciate all of that stuff. But I do want to talk about, you talked about with the pandemic, things have changed so much. And I feel like we're still kind of consistently evolving. And so I would love to get your perspective on just how grading and behavior and just school systems in general have been changing over the past few years. And I guess how those changes are affecting grading and assessment and just kind of where we are now with all of those things.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting because you talk about like the summarizing the research or whatever, but it's interesting. There's not a ton of research in art education on
Mhm.
like, grades and assessment. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of research about student voice and choice and how that impacts student learning, but
Right.
not kind of on the other side of it. Like what about the assessment part?
Mhm.
Um, so when we look at that, when we're talking about like grades in our school systems across the board, um, I will say like what I teach and what I talk about, on the podcast or in my articles or whatever, right? Like wherever I am, it's not always the same I guarantee it's not the same as what's happening across our country, right? Like in every classroom. So it's hard sometimes because what I talk about, I try to teach people about assessment and focus on that,
Yeah.
right? To help them kind of take the grading out of it in a way,
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but in terms of like our school systems, like that has been a really interesting shift. So pre-pandemic, we started off with a lot of like points based,
Yeah.
letter grades, like the 90, 80, 70, that kind of thing. And then there was a huge shift. And again, not all schools, right? But a huge shift into standards based learning. And that seemed to be picking up a lot of speed before the pandemic. Like you saw,
Right.
yeah, you read a lot of research. There was a lot of stuff
Yep.
out there.
Yep.
Schools were changing to this. And I think the idea behind that was to make the feedback specific to the standards instead of a grade that is like an A, B, or C that doesn't really give any information as to
Hmm.
what the student's actually learning, right? Because it's like all bundled. Everything they're learning is bundled into a grade that doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
Um, so there was a lot of like back and forth that. And then, then, you know, we're starting to see schools like trying to provide more accurate or equitable grading practices. So we're starting to hear more of that.
Hmm.
And then like post pandemic, then schools are just kind of trying to figure it out. I think they're trying to go back to the status quo. I mean, that is really what happened, right?
Yeah.
And in my school's case, though, trying to take some of these equitable practices, it was really interesting because they moved to a Z4 is what it's called. Well, what we call it,
I was gonna say, tell me
like
more about a Z4.
yeah, Z4, Z5. So Z4, we no longer have zeros in the grade book. So
Mm.
if a kid doesn't do anything, doesn't turn something in, they cannot get lower than a 40%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if they try something and they fail at it, they can't get lower than a 50%. So you'd put in this like code Z5 and it would be
Okay.
50%. And they could, try again and get higher or whatever. So yeah, that's been really interesting.
Yeah, I would love to just see everyone who's had experience with these sort of concepts when they hear you bring them up. I would love to see just like their physical reaction to it, because I feel like as teachers
Yes.
we're just like,
Mhm.
you just immediately feel defeated as soon as you
Mhm.
hear about this concept. Because I mean, I want to say 2009, maybe, like a
Mhm.
long time ago, a couple teachers from my school and gone to this conference that was talking all about, getting 50% for doing nothing, basically.
Mhm.
And, all of the ideas behind it, they presented to our whole staff. And there was just such an outcry, like such an
Yes.
uproar from our teachers about, why we can't do this, why we don't need to do this. And now, I mean, I feel like it's been gaining steam and then losing it and then gaining steam
Mhm.
again, and now I guess you're living it. So I
Yeah.
mean, I still, I guess, kind of want to remain open minded about the possibility, but still, just in my heart, I know I don't like this.
Right.
So anyway, I would love to know just kind of what your thoughts are, what your experiences are with it. And I don't know, I guess filling in people with a little bit of background, if you could as well. So just I'll give you the floor. Any of your thoughts on
Sure.
40s and 50% from kids doing very little or doing nothing?
My gosh, I have so many thoughts on this. Right? I just want to first address how you said like that visceral reaction or the feeling like you don't know why, but this doesn't sound like a good idea,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I just want to acknowledge that I think as people, we also, as teachers, we want to hold our kids accountable for what they're
Hmm.
learning. And I think
Yes.
the ultimate is like, well, why would you not give them a zero if they turned in zero? Right? That makes sense. And you need to hold them accountable for doing the work. Okay.
Hmm.
So I think I just want to acknowledge that piece right off the
Yeah.
bat, because I
Yeah.
think this is still, and I will come back to it. This is what I'm grappling with myself as I'm, why do I care about this if I don't care about grades, right?
Hmm.
Like still in me, it's kind of the system that we know. So let me give a little background about this. So, this 40 or 50% really comes back to grading for equity. Okay.
Right.
And so many people probably had to do this reading in their undergrad or grad school when they were going through their teaching. But the case against the zero is still like a pretty interesting article talking about the weight of a zero, right? And
Hmm.
there's articles out there too that like, what do I want to say? Like give the other side. They're like,
Yeah.
no, this is a terrible article and why, whatever, right? And this is why. So I can give you my experience. Okay. So, I live in Chicago area. I lived in Chicago for a long time, and Chicago is a highly segregated city.
Hmm.
In the city, outside the city, it's a very segregated for a lot of really historically interesting reasons, not good reasons, but interesting, right? And so because of that, so for example, I taught in Chicago public schools with a predominantly Black and Brown community, in a school that had very little funding. My class sizes were like 40 very large kids in a very small space, right?
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
like a $400 budget. We had like a school nurse part time. I had a kid that had like a seizure disorder. And I was so freaked out that it would be the day that the nurse was not
Just
there,
didn't happen to be there. Yeah.
Yes. And then I go and teach in the suburbs, right? Like this one suburb that I taught at for a long time is like 20 miles away, not even that far. And I mean, resource out the
Yeah.
wazoo,
Just a
right?
different world.
Just complete. I was like, what is this craziness, so just to see those discrepancies, right? Okay. So I'm teaching in CPS and Chicago public schools, and in art, right? I would give a lot. This was like early in my teaching career, but I would give like a lot of small points for everything, right? You do this, you
Hmm.
get a point. You do this, you get a point.
Hmm.
Do that, it's like all practice. Supposed to be low risk, no big deal. Just complete it and you're going to get the A. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
no big deal. But instead, kids would maybe not complete that. And then they would not even start to do any of the work, even these easy things, because they were
Yeah.
already failing,
Yeah.
right?
They feel like it's too big of a hole to dig out of.
Well, that's exactly. They would just give up. And it wasn't just my class, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
it was happening in other classes. And then when they started to slip in my class, then it was like, well, what's the point? I'm already
Yeah.
failing 6 other classes. Why do I even bother? And so the whole point of the 40, 50% is that when you look at that whole, they're starting from a 0% to the 60%. I mean, that's a large percentage. That's such, as you say, a deep hole, right? And it
Hmm.
doesn't seem to matter whatever they did, even if they did these little things to make up these points, they could just never pass, right?
Right.
Or,
Right.
or just feel success, because
Yeah.
even when they were getting 10 out of 10 points for this thing, they were still at a
I
40%
was
mark,
going to say it's not
right?
moving their grade much
It's
at
not
all.
correct. So the idea now of the 40, 50% is that if you make that zero now a 40%, right, they're still not passing, but they don't have to dig out as far. And so the idea is, in theory, it sounds so great.
Yeah.
It's leveling the playing field. It's giving disadvantaged students, really, is what it is, right? Students who don't have the resources, students that have other things in their lives that are keeping them from learning and accessing success.
Yep.
That's leveling that playing field for them. Okay. So fast forward, now I'm at this other school, the pandemic hits, now I'm at a new school, I'm in the Z4, Z5 situation. My
Right.
population at my new school is I say new, I've been there a couple of years now, but it's a very diverse population. Okay. And both like culturally, economically, they're just very diverse population, which is wonderful. And now we're seeing, right, what happened when the pandemic hit is that people were freaking out because states were like, well, here's this time period where the kids aren't going to school, right? This was like the end, that like from March to May or May, June,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
whole period, right? So states were like, you cannot give them a failing grade. right? They're just like, and I don't know about all states. I can only speak, I guess, on Illinois, but they were like, nope, everybody's passing, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Or
Yeah.
if the kid doesn't do anything, it doesn't matter kind of situation. And
Mhm.
people were like freaking out. Do you remember that? They
I
were like,
do.
how
I
could you
do.
do that? How could you let a kid pass? And I'm sitting here going, we're in a global pandemic. Like the trauma, you don't know what kids are going through. You don't know if their
Yeah.
parents are home. You don't know if they have access to internet. Like okay, that's the human in me that is just like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Let's just be realistic for a little bit. But that kind of continued, right? So,
Mhm.
at the same time, our public schools are serving this purpose is to kind of give this equitable access to learning. And I say equitable loosely because, we have to start somewhere in this
Fair.
conversation. It's
Fair.
not always, we know it's not equitable, but
Yeah.
so now during the pandemic, we have this opportunity. I think I talked to you about this in 20. I think I was on the podcast, right? Talking
Yeah.
about these opportunity to change large systemic issues in
Mhm.
education. I'm like,
Mhm.
great, let's change how we do this. And then we didn't,
We just
right?
we just didn't do it.
No, we didn't do it. Everybody wanted to go back to status quo, even for 3 years where it was like hybrid and home and
Yeah.
weird stuff happening all the time.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we're back in school full time for a while. And we're so like shocked that our students have no motivation, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
where did this come from? I am giving grades. I'm holding them to high standards. Why do they not care about this? Right.
Yes.
Okay. So now you have students who are struggling with apathy, with motivation, a sense of purpose. You have kids who used to maybe be like, if I maybe driven by the grades, that extrinsic motivation, like
Right.
this get me an A, which is what I still talk about, like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that,
I
right?
was gonna say I still hate that
I
question,
still
but
do.
yes.
But now I'm getting kids who are like, will this just pass me? And
Right.
you're like,
Right.
what? Okay. Like, okay, bare minimum anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
first, the or the 40/50, the Z4 50%, whatever you want to call it. Okay. It's just like standardized tests, in my opinion. It's like any sort of one size fits all approach, right? These are band aids attempting to solve a
Yeah.
large,
Yep.
deep systemic problem.
Yep. Exactly right.
And I think it is essential as educators, though, right? It's our job to reflect on what's happening, how it's actually working in our classrooms,
Mhm.
and be advocates for change, right? Because we know that what we teach and how we teach is so much larger than just the content, right?
Right.
So, at minimum, it's our job as educators to really critically analyze these things and really question what's happening to do this. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so now come back to the crux of like what I said, I'm grappling with grades is I'm sitting in this, right? So, like I said, we're stuck in the system with grades for now. We have to enter grades. We're expected to give points or letters.
Mhm.
And our schools are typically set up with protocols with how much you can weight summatives and
Yeah.
formatives
Yep.
and
Yep.
right, how much you
70% for this and 30% for the yes.
real,
Yes.
right? Or how often you record. You have to put in 3 grades per week, or that
Mhm.
you can and cannot grade certain things, right?
Yeah.
So now what's happening is we saw in our school that we were struggling with this chronic absenteeism issue, right?
Right.
This is a big thing across the nation too. And whether they're not coming to school or they're in school but they're not coming to class. And I do give my school credit. We're working at, like, at the end of the school year, we were talking about, hey, it was so funny, we're sitting in the institute day and they're like, we are going to crack down on X, Y, and Z with and people just were
Mhm.
like standing up applauding, like, thank God you're addressing this issue.
Yeah.
So here's the situation. Okay. So I can have a kid that comes to my class at the beginning of the semester, right? And they start off really strong. And they're doing all this easy stuff because I like to front load easy, fun, like get
Yeah,
them
for sure. I
engaged,
mean, you get kids in
foundational
your
skills.
class, you get them excited about things, you let them find some success early. Yes.
Success early. So I'm like, we'll do a little name tag. You get a small summative grade for that. Okay.
Hmm.
We're making like a sketchbook cover. Okay, great. You get a larger because that's a bigger
Yeah,
Okay. Now we're starting off with a solid A in the class.
right.
Okay. Then the semester goes on and I'm teaching topics and tools. Now, mind you, I didn't say this, but I mostly teach jewelry and metalsmithing right now.
Right.
Okay. And so all of those tools, techniques, everything is scaffolded to build on one another. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So now a kid stops showing up to class or they're coming sporadically to class. Okay. So maybe I get them to complete like one more artwork before the end of the semester, right?
Right.
They're showing up here and there. And Tim, I am a real sucker for helping this kid out, right? Because,
Same.
oh my God,
I know where you're coming from.
right? And I know there are teachers who are like, I'm not going to help this kid. They're not sure. And I'm just like, come on, I just need you. Like, you're here. We're going to do something. We're going to make it. Okay. So, I realize that there's bigger fish to fry than my class.
Hmm.
Okay. But it is
Hmm.
also, I want to acknowledge, very ridiculous. It's exhausting. It's often unfair to others. And sometimes in my class, especially, it's like dangerous, right? They're coming in, they're
Yeah,
using,
using these tools that they don't have
yes.
any experience with. Yeah.
Yes. And maybe this is why I'm grappling because it's like my own personal like frustrations versus what's better. Okay, so they come and they do and they make this one project and still they get, let's say, maybe 3 out of 6 summatives complete. Let's just say,
Hmm.
I'm making this up. Okay.
Yeah.
They still pass my class. They
Mm.
haven't done more than half of the work, but they're usually getting even like a high D now, or sometimes a low C at this
All
point.
right.
So then, like for a student, what's the purpose
I
of
was going to
coming?
say, if there's one of those kids,
Right.
if they are one of those kids who's just saying, will this pass me? Will this give me enough to get me the credit? What is the point of showing up 90% of the time if you can show up 40% of the time and still
Yeah.
get that grade that you're looking for?
And I know that Mrs. Taylor is such a sucker, like I said, and she's gonna always help me and make it happen. Okay. So the problem for us, right? And I can talk, like, obviously, this is not just arts, right? This is
Yeah.
across all content areas, but I'm not going to sit there and compare. It's not my place to do that. But we're a performance based classroom. Okay. So
Right.
I like to say that we're performance based, right? You can't just take a book
Hmm.
home and read it and then come and take a test or write a paper and pass the standards. Okay.
Yeah.
You really need to be in the classroom
So
to do
you
the
have
work.
to be in the studio.
Yes. And especially for medals, I always joke, I'm like, if you're not going to come to class like the first week, I'm like, if you're a kid who struggles with coming to class, this is not the class for you. You
Right.
can't take a saw and a torch home. Okay. Just saying. So, if you're not here, I think in a performance-based class, like how is it okay to pass? Period.
Hmm.
The work is here, you're not here. Okay. So now it's at the end of the semester and I'm looking at maybe a few kids in this situation. Like, like really? I sit there and I go, okay, so this kid is supposed to be graduating and this kid is still needs to get his credit or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, am I really the gatekeeper of this kid graduating?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
if they just need my class to graduate, but they never came, or they came enough just to get a D minus or, F
Right.
plus, whatever
Right.
you want to say. I'm like, this is just not a hill I really want to die on. Like they clearly have so much more going on in life. And, I don't know, life can be
Like
hard.
yeah, do you want your two jewelry projects to be what keeps that kid from graduating? Like
Right.
it really puts a lot of pressure on you as a teacher.
It
And
does.
again, that doesn't feel fair to you as an educator to have to be that gatekeeper, to have to be that decider. It's a
Okay.
lot.
Yes, but it also doesn't feel fair to me as a teacher for the integrity of my curriculum
Right.
and what I
Right.
teach and the amount of time and effort and patience and passion, clearly, that I'm putting into each and every student. Like, does that
Right.
not warrant something?
Yeah.
this is where I go back and
No,
forth, right?
you're
Okay.
absolutely right. Because what does that say about your curriculum if, like a kid shows up,
Okay.
like we said, 30,
Yes.
40% of the time, but still does enough to pass? Like
Right.
it's a lot
Right.
to grapple with.
It is. Grapple is our word of the day. Okay. So I will say, remember I said it's important that we critically analyze and are advocates. So
Hmm.
I have to say I'm not quiet.
Yeah.
I do talk to my administration about things when I'm frustrated. But I also look to seek for solutions, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not just like, this is a terrible policy. I'm sitting here going, okay, these are some of the things that I'm grappling with, and this is what needs to change. And what if we try this? So one of the
Mhm.
conversations I'm having with my principal currently is specifically around performance-based situation, right? So
Yeah.
like maybe we adjust this to say a kid cannot pass. Like maybe this needs to be a set in stone. A kid cannot pass a class if they've not completed 5 out of 6 summatives, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm making this up. I don't know, right? But maybe that protects some of that integrity, but also incentivizes students to attend class,
Yeah. Yeah. But
And
then on the flip side, like if, they get 3 or 4 months into the semester and then they have only completed one of the summatives, and then they're like 4 more
right.
just to pass, you're never going to see that kid again. And, like what is the incentive for them to come at this point? And
But
so,
then,
yeah,
but then maybe that's a good time. I mean, I'm talking high school, right? But maybe
yeah,
that's a good time to say, hey, maybe you need to drop this class and take something else,
yeah,
or take a study hall, or, maybe that's the time to, I mean, obviously you should be talking to your team anyway. Like if a kid's
right,
not
right.
showing up, right? You're not just like, oh, well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
No,
yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot to figure out. And like you said, it's good to keep pushing that conversation forward. But like you said, we are not the ones that have all the solutions, nor should we be expected to. I don't think so. It makes it tough. Like we can't solve all those problems. So
right.
okay, so bigger picture though, I still keep thinking about students passing courses, like getting credit with just minimal engagement. And so just thinking about what you said about the integrity of what you're doing, like how do we reconcile that tension between, upholding the standards that we have, but also recognizing everything else that's going on in kids' life, all of the systemic issues that we might be dealing with, all of those extra things that affect student performance that are outside of our control. Like how do we uphold the standards of our class while still recognizing that there are so many other issues going into, student performance?
Right. I mean, I think I just told you that I'm still grappling with this, Tim.
Right.
So, okay, I'm just kidding. So, I'll tell you, this is what I've come to terms with, right? Because I swear this comes up every semester, and I'm like, why am I still milling about this? I should be,
Yeah.
here are some steps that I can take, right? So, first, I take a deep breath, and I do realize that I'm not solving the problems of the world. And even though I keep trying to, like little by little,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I like you said, it's like the circle of control, right? It's like out of my control. I am doing the best I can with what I have and the systems that
Mhm.
are in place, right? And so I consistently try to focus on making my grading practices as equitable as possible, right?
Mhm.
And really also like accessible as possible,
Yeah.
So focusing on essential concepts, trying to round out my teaching using the standards. But at the end of the day, I really want my students to have a unique and meaningful experience making art, right? That's my
Right.
goal. And that's the best I can do with that.
Yeah, and just
Okay.
do what you can in your little corner of the world.
Right. And so part of that is also taking a moment to recognize and remind myself that grades and our grading system is inequitable, it's inaccurate, and honestly, it's really arbitrary, right? Like from
Right.
teacher to teacher, school to school.
I feel like you used to write about this all the time.
Yes, I did. I did. Yeah. So it's okay for me. I give myself grace, right? Or permission. It's okay for
Mhm.
me to give a kid the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I have contacted home, if I've worked with my school staff and done everything in my power to help this kid succeed, that is in my realms. Now, like your boundaries might be different than my boundaries. Maybe you're not as much of a sucker for the kids as I am. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's why teaching is such like a human experience, right?
Yeah.
We're dealing with these conversations. This is not just us dealing with it. Every teacher out there at some point, or like if you're me, it's all the time,
Yeah.
but
All of the points.
all the time. But that's what makes the system so imperfect,
Mhm.
I mean, and that's
Mhm.
what we just need to recognize. So,
Yeah.
um, I also just really focus on connections. So I feel like if I can make connections with my students, then they typically want to be there and they want to
Right.
learn. They want to try to learn.
Mhm.
And that will provide them those opportunities to actually not fail my class,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I always say, like, if you're here and you're doing something, you're going to do well. Like,
Right. Right.
because of how I teach, right? And how I grade or how I assess, whatever. But lastly, just also be okay with recognizing that you're human, right? So you can't do the
Yeah.
work for the kid.
Yeah.
Ultimately, some of this are life lessons for this kid that needs to be learned here. They're failing
Mhm.
or struggling in a safety net of school with a lot of resources. And sometimes that can be a really important or powerful life saving tool for some of
Yeah.
these kids, right?
Mhm.
In others, unfortunately, it does reinforce their own negative narratives. But it's okay to not for not every kid to do the school thing. It's okay that they don't pass. It's
Right.
okay. They can still be amazing, successful individuals, and you're not the like keeper of that success, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's, I don't know, that's something that I think about a lot. Just kids kind of internalizing their failures and kind of having that stick with them, or just same thing. Kids have bad art experiences in elementary school, and then you get them in high school, and like they've internalized this so much, and
Yeah.
they have such negative self-talk when it comes to creativity or making art or anything like that. And so I guess I worry about that. I worry about kids failing my class and then just carrying that throughout their lives. And so I guess I'd love to know what you think about that. And I like, how do we encourage kids to be creative and to grow as artists and to do the work with all of the realities that sort of come with that? Like, how do we balance that, encouragement on our side, but still have to deal with the realities of grading and assessment,
Mhm.
and maybe kids not passing or not doing as well if they aren't there to do everything we need them to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, this is a big one for me. And this is why I really don't want to focus on the grades in my classroom, right?
Hmm.
I want them to know it's okay to try and fail. And that's part of art making,
Yeah.
right? How many times
Yeah.
have I tried something as what I would consider, I don't want to say professional artist, but like, right, professional artist. Like,
Right.
how many times have I tried something and failed? And I'm not like, well, that's an F for me. I guess that's the end of my life. I can't graduate and move
Right.
But there are not very many other classrooms in the school that allow safety for them to experience failure and have a
Yeah.
positive response, right?
Yep.
Without a
Yep.
grade impacting them in that way. So, the problem, I mean, there's, I keep saying the problem is that grades are supposed to be the purpose of grades originally was supposed to be feedback. It's just a data point, a
Yep.
measurement of your ability to quote
Yep.
unquote master the standards, right? But instead, we've really focused on kind of this inflation of grades,
Right.
the pressure that kids have to have all A's in order to go to a good college or even have success in life at all. And
Hmm.
you don't get A's, then you're going to be living on the streets. Like, okay, you know. So, or also, like, do you remember when we were growing up too? Like a C, at least in my head, maybe I internalized this. I mean, I was all like, I have to get A's too. And I don't know where that came from, but a
Yeah.
C was considered like average, right? It
Yeah.
was like you were proficient. You did
You're
the thing.
doing fine.
Yes.
Let's keep moving. You got this
Right.
done. Let's keep moving.
Exactly. And now really an A is that level, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a kid expects an A if they meet a standard.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest, even I do that. I'm like, well, if you've met the standard, like great.
Right. Right.
If you go above and beyond, then you get 100% on this. Like, way to go. You know,
Right.
so we're in this place that we have to kind of like deprogram the importance of the outcome and allow our students space to really sit in the mess in the art room.
Yeah,
Right.
but like that's so hard when nobody else is doing that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like when
Hmm.
that's the only space for them to think and process in that way. Like it's really,
Well, and I think also that's a really good point because, we back to the integrity of what we do, like we don't want kids, we oftentimes have kids that say, like, well, I just put forth effort, so I should get an A. And you're
yeah.
like, well, that's not the purpose of art class either. Like, you
Right.
tried, you get an A, obviously. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. That's, for me at least, that's not the case, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's kind of the deprogramming really is focusing on the importance of the value of critical thinking, the problem solving,
Right.
the failing and trying again, right? That resilience and perseverance, like not just a failure and that's it. But those are the spaces that where innovation and creativity really lie, right?
Yeah.
Is in those kind of the mess.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, like learning how to manage time, collaborating with others, giving and receiving feedback, really looking at just at bare minimum, right? Like looking at art, thinking about how we consume it, what's being told to them through imagery, because they're so like
Yeah.
inundated with imagery,
Yeah.
right? Like that's where it's at. So, like coming full circle, I guess we again have this unique opportunity to support our students through these like incredible life skills, right?
Hmm.
And so to me, again, in our grading practices or in our, I don't know, assessment, the way that I want to make sure that I'm coming across to my students is that I'm holding them to these high standards.
Right.
My expectations are that they're trying these things, that it's okay to not have the perfect outcome, right?
Yeah.
We're still aiming for that perfect outcome, right? But it's all these other things that will build to get you there,
I was going to
you
say
know?
there's so many things to learn along the way to that. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the message that we need to keep communicating, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I always like to wrap up with advice at the end of the podcast, but like there's nothing here because we're just kind of sitting and reflecting. I guess I would
Yeah.
encourage people to kind of sit with these thoughts and process these thoughts and think about, what they're communicating to their students through their grades, through their assessment, their feedback, through all of their communications with them, and
Mhm.
what you're trying to do with all of that, what you are doing with all of that. But Jenna, just like any closing thoughts that you want to share. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's a clean way to wrap all of
No.
this up, but
Yeah.
just some final thoughts that you're considering.
Well, I would love to hear from our audience and what they think about this too, because I'm so curious and interested in their experiences too. Um, but I mean, truly, when you come down to it, like you said, there's just really no right or wrong answer to this, right?
Hmm.
And that's the thing that I think, we're such in these fitting in these boxes of like, this is how you're supposed to teach. This is what you're, how the
Right.
standardized test that we're
Right.
doing. This is how you're grading because we're kind of lumped as a school, but we're not, like teaching is just so, like I said, it's such a human thing,
Hmm.
and, it's really easy for us to get frustrated about a student's maybe negative behavior or performance or any of that kind of thing, and then be like, well, they didn't try, or
Yeah. Yeah.
and then like penalize them, right? And these grades and so I guess when it comes down to it, like I said, it's just really important to keep thinking about your own practices and your own biases, and keep leading with high standards, but also compassion and empathy, that
Mm-hmm.
everyone's situation, like my situation is not the same as, rural Utah. I don't know. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or elementary to middle school. It's just everybody's situation is so different and unique. And I guess I'd always err on against the one size fits all approach, because I just don't feel like that is solving anybody's problems, right? It's like you just have to do the best you can with what you have to serve your population. And in the meantime, hopefully some of the things that we're doing and addressing or working through as a art ed community can like have further reach out to have these conversations and to
Yeah.
try to affect change,
Um,
on a more
yeah.
global aspect. So
No, I think that's I don't know, a really good way to look at things, a really good call to action to keep talking about these things, to keep sharing these things. And, who knows what ideas are going to resonate with people. Like you said, everyone knows their situation best, and they have to teach, they have to grade for their own individual situation. But the more we talk about what is being done, what has been successful, I think the more those ideas can get shared, and the more people can find things that work for them and work for their students. So,
yeah.
all right. Well, Janet, thank you for coming on and processing all of this with me, discussing all of these things with me. I really appreciate your perspective. I really appreciate how deeply you think about these things. And like I said, hopefully some of this discussion can be helpful for everyone who's listening. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Hey, one quick question for you. Maybe when I'm done with my capstone and I get all this research done, I can come back and tell you what happened.
I would love that, actually.
Ah, all right. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, Janet.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you to Janet for coming on, for sharing her thoughts, for being vulnerable, and just talking about some of the things that we don't really have the answer to. So, as we wrap up this episode, I just hope that our reflections and our conversation today gave you some space as you're listening to this to consider your own practices and your own experiences with grading and assessment. As so often we're expected to have clear-cut policies and perfect systems, and that obviously is not always the case, and it's okay to be figuring it out. It's okay to still be grappling, our word of the day. Okay, but the real work is, in what we do in the day to day. Okay, it's in the questions that we keep asking. So keep reflecting, keep thinking, keep improving, and, as Janet talked about repeatedly today, keep advocating for yourself. So I love Janet's dedication and her commitment to her students, and hearing her talk through these ideas and share her stories and share her own reflections, and offering that perspective can remind us that, we can still lead with expectations, but we can also make space for our students to be human. We know that motivation and attendance and engagement all look different than they did before. And we know that we need to keep adapting and changing. But I think it's a good reminder that there are always ways to keep adjusting, keep advocating, and keep growing. Art Ed Radio is produced by The Art of Education with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you, as always, for listening. We would love for you to share this episode if you think it may help someone. We also appreciate all of the ratings and reviews that people leave for us. So if you have a few seconds to give us a 5-star rating, or even leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen, we would love to see it. Thank you again for listening. We'll talk to you next week.